Hi everyone,
Yeah.
welcome in our channel. Today we have a very special guest. It's Ivo from Powerhouse AI. He joins us to discuss about warehousing efficiencies and how we can basically have technologies and AI helping us, artificial intelligence helping us solving them. So Ivo, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Martina, for having me. My name is Ivo indeed. I'm CEO and co-founder of Powerhouse AI, a Singapore-based startup focused on enabling warehouse operators to automatically count and check inventory.
That's great. I'm very happy to have Ivo today because we had a quite good discussion last week regarding warehousing efficiencies, and I think it was very, very beneficial for me too to understand how technology can help warehousing overall. Considering I also studied a little bit of artificial intelligence, for me it was just okay. That's the next step in let's say warehousing and overall supply chain. Consider we have a lot of inefficiencies. So what I was thinking is that maybe we could discuss a little bit more about the warehouse overall and what we see, what you notice over those years, and what, let's say, brought you to develop such a technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think one of the core things that struck us when we before we started with Powerhouse AI was a study. I think it was a study conducted by Zebra that the average inventory accuracy of a warehouse globally is just around 66%, which kind of astonished us because in the end, warehousing is all about picking, packing, and storing the right goods in the right quantity as efficiently as possible. And if that number is relatively low, and then you already see from the beginning there are some big inefficiencies there that need to be solved. And that was one of the core, and still is one of our core missions, to bring up that efficiency number, the accuracy number.
That's very interesting, and I think I could add on that the fact that we, especially in my experience, like handling e-commerce brands overall, we had a lot of troubles with the manpower and inaccuracies when we had cycle counts or end of the year counts. That would take so long. And I remember every time I used to go to the warehouse to check, not really counting. I mean, sometimes I also counted, and that was very painful, just because it's so easy to make mistakes, right? And to run into inaccuracies. Maybe I counted already that box, I don't remember, I lost the count, I had to count it again. And you can imagine when you have tons of goods, in the warehouse. So that's definitely a pain also.
Yeah, especially indeed. And we have many examples of that, like warehouses that are shut down for 5 days. And then like literally 35 people counting for these days in 12-hour shifts. It's a very painful and expensive process. And you can imagine when you have to count for like 5 days in a row, you have to count 20,000 pallet positions, that you also get tired, and that mistakes are being made. People are often considered to be the golden standard of counting, and sometimes considered as barely any mistakes are made. But research has also shown that the average counter, so to say, counting person within a warehouse, has an accuracy between 90 and 97%, and 97% is only reached by those that have already worked in the warehouse for multiple months, and really the top performers, so to say. So there's a lot to gain in that area as well.
But overall, I think having a faster count, like in any let's say function of the warehouse, can be like cycle count, can be inbounding, especially because it's also where you kind of put in stock, put away basically goods that are coming, and you're basically have them ready to be shipped out without waiting too long to restock products that maybe are out of stock in that period, right? So that also helps, I guess, to reduce the let's say the time it takes to inbound products, to check them and put back in stock and make them available, right? That's also relies on manpower, and I mean, it's quite time consuming.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in general, most warehouses are still extremely, in that sense, manual. There's a very small subset, and don't have the exact numbers with me at this moment, but I believe like 10-15% of warehouses that are automated. So the large majority barely or not uses any automation in their warehouse processes.
Yeah, I think it's very common to have the picking process for, let's say, in the automation, let's say robots that pick rather than anything else. So there's still a long, let's say, long way to go before we can actually, I think, automate more functions. But definitely, I think in my perspective, that's why it was very interesting for me to talk to you, just because I experienced so many inbounds and inventory counts. It's just like, people are there. You cannot just rely on one person when you unload stocks from a truck. You have the person that needs to manage, the person needs to monitor, the person that needs to take out from the truck, someone that needs to bring it inside. It cannot be the same person. So you have a lot of people, and you can imagine when you have tons of customers waiting, and trucks that are lining up waiting for unloading, and that's just so many people just fixed there every day to unload stocks of multiple brands. So definitely a lot can be done there. But overall, my question would be, so how can Powerhouse AI help basically solving those challenges, or trying to make them a little bit more let's say efficient?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, as you also said, like at every touch point in the current process, things can go wrong, right? We have also indeed seen warehouses where sometimes they aren't even aware on what's coming in before the goods actually arrive. Everything is done on paper. People have to check papers and like literally convert pieces into cartons by making calculations on the paper. That one then goes to administration, who then has to put it in the WMS system. And at every handover or at every touch point, things can go wrong. And especially if you look at the inbound process, that's kind of your base, right? That's where the whole warehouse process starts. So if your data at inbound is wrong, you can be sure things will be messed up in later processes within a warehouse as well. So definitely, if you look at specifically on how we are thinking about that and how we help warehouses, is by digitizing this process at inbound and at cycle count with an extremely simple to use technology. In short, we provide the warehouse operator with an application that can be installed on a warehouse device or on a phone, and the warehouse operator simply needs to take pictures of the goods that come in, needs to take pictures of pallets, and we do three things with that. So first of all, we recognize the goods. So we tell you, okay, so we read barcodes, QR codes, or text on the box, so that we know, like, okay, we have these goods in front of us, and then we count the goods. So if you have a pallet or partial pallets, without going too much into the technicalities, but we create a 3D model and we count the number of boxes how you would count it as a human. So then you know what you have in front of you and in what quantity. And then we also take over your administration part. So we connect to your WMS and we'll compare it, if you're talking about inbound, with your purchase order, and we'll flag any discrepancies if there are any, eliminating the chance for human errors in those processes. And for stock take, it's kind of similar. Also there, it's counting and then comparison with the data that you have in your WMS or ERP system.
Well, I guess that's literally next level. So as I said, for me, it was just taking so much time. Like any inbound, it's just like counting. It's at very minimum, counting boxes rather than pallets. So you need to count the boxes at just so much time. And that's definitely makes things way easier to handle and more accurate. And there's even more, let's say, warehouses and 3PL around the world that do it even more manually than others, where they literally need to take one box at a time without even reading the labels. So I think it also comes to data quality in a way, in terms of what's shown on the box, for example, how e-commerce brands sends their stock to their warehouses, right? Because it must be that they have a barcode, they need to still standardize, and that's also something that you need to take in consideration with the artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah, standardization is still an issue, and warehouse managers will probably recognize that it can differ per supplier how your label will look like, for example, and or data on dimensions, which might be very useful for e-commerce companies in order to calculate their shipping costs. The manufacturer knows the dimensions, but often these numbers get lost every time the good takes another step in the whole supply chain, and that's extremely inefficient. So at inbound, that means that like a certain number of warehouses starts the dimensioning process again, while the data is already somewhere available, but it's just not being communicated. So that's why we also that's also where we help, and why we also advise warehouses take your own responsibility there and gather your own data. Make sure that your data foundation is good, and based on that you can build new AI type of solutions to make your warehouse even smarter over time.
So here comes my questions: what are your plans for the future? Like for now, this is what's supported. We understood that the functions that are supported, but is there anything else that you're planning to develop? Let's say, is there any limitations or something that is not yet available, like mixed pallets with mixed carton, something like that?
Yeah, definitely. There are definitely multiple challenges ahead that we are very keen to solve as well. So for us at this moment, we support those warehouses that do carton picking and or have boxed shapes type of goods. That's what we recognize. That's what we can count. We also get questions from some warehouses. Can't you have your solution on a drone, or can we use our CCTV cameras instead of mobile phone? And those are areas that we are exploring and see that if we can expand in those areas. We are actually in talk with some drone manufacturers at this moment regarding this as well. On the other hand, we also get questions on mixed pallets, and there I have to be very honest. Mixed pallets will probably always be extremely challenging. Why? If you have a mixed pallet in front of you, there are always boxes in the middle that you cannot see. The only way to check and count those is by depalletizing them. So with the solution that we have at this moment, it will probably not offer a solution with respect to those type of goods. The same at the moment for individual pieces. Let's say you have an open box. At this moment, we cannot determine yet how many items are in an open box. We have ideas about that. We are thinking about it, but this is something, in that sense, really a next step also for artificial intelligence in general to support that. It's our ambition, but at this moment, not supported yet.
But I still think that it's not very common. Most of the times, any warehouse requires, and it's like a must to have single SKUs on each pallet. Like you can't mix it because it becomes difficult for them to just count as well and recognize where are those goods, because we inbounded 100, but 100 are split in 3, 4, 5 pallets together with others. So that becomes difficult for them too. So it's something that is not really that common anymore, unless you have loose pieces, literally something that, I have 100 more pieces, I'm just going to put them together with another pallet. And I think that's very minimal. So at the end of the day, nowadays it's still done manually. So I guess there's no problem to, count by, using artificial intelligence wherever you have no mixed pallets. And in the case you do have a couple, that's where you just count them, manually, because at the end of the day, I think, the time spent by counting everything manually, or like having like the majority counted, by automating the count, and then whatever is left just to do it manually, it's still like a big win. So it's the same as the picking process at the end of the day. Like we have robots that pick, but we don't have robots that pack. So it's still, it's not literally the entire pick and packing process, and that's identified as pick and pack at the end of the day. So we would expect when we talk about picking robots that they pack as well, but that's not really the case. So
to take it step by step.
Yeah,
and
step by
and I
step.
think as well for yeah, absolutely. And I think warehouses have to really determine themselves and where they are in their stage with respect to digitalization, and really take it step by step, and do not expect the moon as well from the beginning. Because it also requires warehouses to change their processes. Automation is not like a silver bullet. We always say you first have to optimize your processes before you automate. We help with that as well. We think along with warehouses. But robots and drones, they're not like, yeah, you open the pack and it works immediately. But if you take some effort, the payoffs are definitely there. And yeah, we truly believe warehouses should really take those steps, especially because the market, there's also an increasing pressure on warehouses, right? And warehouses, clients want their goods quicker, ideally same day or like next day. And yeah, efficiency steps are required in order to meet those new requirements.
I guess like that you basically got right. Nowadays, everyone expects things to be delivered or orders to be delivered right away, and everything depends not really by it doesn't rely on the courier anymore, because we do have fast solutions if we want them, but it relies on the order processing. So how long it's going to take to actually give it to the courier. So that's definitely quite a pain, I would say. One last question for you would be, what do you think about those warehousing efficiencies, and up to what extent artificial intelligence can support? Do you think that we will ever reach a fully automated warehouse ever?
Yeah, definitely. There are some examples already, not fully automated, but coming very, very close. So it's definitely possible, but that's not for everyone. Because if you have, for example, if you're a 3PL provider and you have changing goods, oftentimes that requires changes in your automation as well. So for those warehouses that probably can never be fully automated, AI type of solutions or more flexible type of robots in the future might become very useful. And I think AI can have uses all over your warehouse. Let's say at inbound, you get, like we said at the beginning, you have different type of labels, like reading those labels. And then you're talking about technologies like optical character recognition, natural language processing, for example, interpreting that. Then when goods coming in, you probably want to dimension them, you want to weigh them. And then there is another AI that tells you, okay, at which slot can you best put your pallets for efficiency reasons, taking into account your demand and supply, taking into account picking routes. And even better, at the end of the day, the AI might tell you, if you rearrange your pallets like this, then they are efficiently stacked for tomorrow, right? And there are so many areas. Or with packing, let's say you have individual items, the dimensions, it might recommend you the ideal box in order to reduce your volumetric weight, so that your shipping costs become lower. So there are like a gazillion areas, I would say, where AI could add significant value to warehouses right now, or in the future as well.
I couldn't agree more. So that's great to hear that we are on the same page. So to summarize today's sessions, basically we said that there's still a lot of room for artificial intelligence and technologies overall to improve efficiency in the warehousing and overall supply chain, I would say, which is an industry that is still relying a lot of manpower. And nowadays, especially with COVID, we realized that manpower can somehow be a challenge to have basically in place. So definitely a lot of room for improvements thanks to artificial intelligence. And I would say we need more companies like Powerhouse AI, definitely, because there's so much work that can be done and more efficiently, basically. So thank you so much, Ivo, for joining us today. That was literally my pleasure to have you. And of course,
likewise,
Thank you so much. If you guys want to reach out to him or let's say learn more about his company, I leave all the contacts and details in the description of this video. So you can just contact him directly or his team. You will find basically everything in the description. So thanks again. And Ivo, do you want to say anything to our audience?
Yeah, thanks. I'd like definitely reach out if you're open to it, and we'd be happy to provide you with a demo so you can see the technology for ourselves. And yeah, I think as well, with respect to like McKinsey, it was a study by McKinsey also said, okay, like the logistics sector as one of the biggest potentials of technology. So really, we are now at a point where technology is at a certain level. That it can help not only the big multinational warehouses, but also the smaller ones that might think they're not ready for it. There's a lot of opportunity for these type of warehouses as well. So I'd really advise them as well to really look into it, and we'd be happy to think along, of course.
That's a great advice and great feedback. Thank you so much again for joining. And
thank you.
Remember, guys, just contact him if you are interested to learn more and check their website.
Thanks Martina.
Again. See you in the next videos.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.